Around the time that I was born, my father purchased this Marantz 2230 stereo receiver. This receiver has seen many years, and unfortunately was neglected for a good part of that and shoved in the back of a closet and then into a garage just because it felt outdated. But when I visited my father recently, he gave me the opportunity to possess it, and I relished the opportunity to give it some new life and make it really shine once again. This receiver holds a special place in my heart because it's the same receiver that I used to listen to many of the bands that I fell in love with and still listen to this day. So when I had the opportunity to clean it up and give it some new life again, I jumped at the opportunity to do so. This receiver is from a 1974 model, and it's definitely seen some better days. And the first thing I did whenever I got it was to make sure to go through and give it a thorough cleaning, inside and out. The outside was relatively unscathed as it came with a casing, but the inside had definitely seen some brighter days. So it was a good opportunity to take it all apart, see what worked, see what didn't, see if anything needed replacing, and kind of clear off some of the major buildage of dust. After going through the inside and noticing that there was more dust than could be wiped off with just a rag, we decided to move on to the front plate. The front plate was relatively unscathed, however, some of the potentiometers and dials were a little bent, maybe a little crooked just from usage and from moving around from place to place over the last many years. So we decided to take the opportunity to pull off some of the knobs and take a look and see exactly how the plate looked underneath, and ensure the backside was still complete, intact, no major breakages in the components. I looked online just to see what was available, and there's a lot of aftermarket parts that were available for the Marantz systems, but for the most part, everything that we pulled apart seemed to be in good condition. A few minor breakages here and a few little tweaks here, and it looked like everything was good to go. The underside of the receiver was very clean. Just, I guess, the way that the receiver sits, not much dirt falls on the bottom, and so it was in great shape. We decided to take apart the front plate completely and look behind the unit just to make sure there was no missing gears or anything too far out of sorts. And if there was, we had plans to fix it, but after we pulled off the front plate, we realized that it was relatively clean and everything seemed relatively intact. Getting off the front plate was a little bit nerve-wracking because with a system this old, it's not really quite sure what's been moved or jostled out of place. And so whenever I pulled off the front of the front face, I was surprised to see that everything was still intact, and this unit was built strong and built sturdy. So everything was relatively clean, everything was relatively intact, and nothing seemed to be out of place or no components needed to be replaced. So I was very surprised and very happy to see that. We decided to make sure everything was nice and clean before we started to button the unit back up. This just required taking a nice, easy rag and some swipes over the top just to clean up any debris that had been built up. Sometimes debris builds up in the back of the clear windows, but it was easily cleaned out. I took the opportunity while everything was apart to take the air compressor and blow out the majority of the dust that was sitting on top. With a unit this old, I was cautious to be very gentle with my cleaning to make sure not to jostle anything loose or pull anything apart. Before I buttoned it all back together, I decided to go ahead and do a power test just to make sure that everything worked. The only thing I noticed was one of the lights in the back of the display was out, but I'll save that for another day. One of the potentiometer shafts was just a little compressed, and so it wasn't holding the knob on for the volume control. And so a simple fix to that is just to spread it back out. But again, with units this old, you have to be very delicate, but I was able to get it taken care of just in time to start reassembling everything again. Reassembly is fairly simple, just a reverse order of attaching everything. I took great care to make sure that I put together everything in the same order it came out, including putting the same screws in the holes that they came from. Just because this unit's been sitting so long and has married itself to exactly what it likes, I made sure to take great care to put it together how it was before. After assembly, made sure to put the unit back into the case that it came in and attach the feed to the bottom. Again, taking great care to make sure that I was very gentle with putting every component back together the way it came apart, and making sure that I didn't bend any pieces or misalign anything, because finding these pieces again is near impossible. I'm going to be turning this into a guitar amplifier, and so for that I needed to make a speaker cabinet for the head to rest on top of. So I went to the local hardware store and I found this lumber, which was cheap and effective, and so I decided to build this right about 20 by 22 inches, and that'll be enough to mount this head on top of, and it'll also be enough to put one 12-inch speaker in the middle of. I tried to match the bevels the same as the actual cabinet and just put 45s on all the outside edges. A simple square construction is all I'm going to be doing for this, and to do that I used these L brackets just to make sure all my angles were correct and that it was supported and sturdy enough to support the Marantz 2230 head, which weighs almost about 50 pounds. It's a very heavy unit, so I wanted to make sure this cabinet was very structurally sound and could support the weight of this cabinet for many years to come. I always have a great time putting projects like this together, and it's one of my favorite things to do, is just to make old things new again, and give new life to things that have meaning to me. And so this is one of my favorite projects that I've done so far, and I'm really happy with the way it turned out. So after building the cabinet, I decided to make the front speaker mount, and so I just ended up using particle board for this. It's going to be covered up with a screen that I ordered, so I figured that would be the best material to use for the front of it. After I put the cabinet together, I realized that I wanted to add some decorative touches to the corners of the cabinet, and so I ended up cutting a 45 into them, and I had some leftover teak wood from a previous project that I had built, and so I cut out some strips of the teak wood, and I decided to use those as little bracing brackets for the outside. For the inside, to mount the particle board speaker board, I ended up putting just little squares inside just to lean the rest against, and ended up gluing those on the inside of it. And this will again just serve as the mount for holding the actual speaker board. Putting together the cabinet, decided to dust it off and blow it off as much as possible, and start applying the stain. The stain that I used is a little bit darker and actually matches the Marantz unit, but not the case that the Marantz unit is actually in. I thought this would be a nice good contrast, just to show some wood tones, but show some different variations of the color, and I think it turned out pretty good. I like the way it looks. After staining the wood, I decided to test fit the actual speaker board, and it fit in there pretty well, and it adds a good contrast. I decided to cut out the teak pieces that I was going to use for the corner accents, and after I measured them up and ensured that they were the length that I needed, I began to start gluing them in place. Once I had them in place, it was just a matter of clamping them in and letting the glue dry. This is one of the most frustrating parts for me, as I love to finish projects, and watching glue dry is not my favorite thing to do. Oftentimes I get impatient, but I really wanted to do this project justice, so I made sure to do it right this time around. After the glue did dry, I decided to plane down all the sharp edges left over. And after I did that, I made sure to sand it flush with the rest of the cabinet. This gave it a nice soft rounded edge, but also gave it some accent at the same time. I decided to cut out the soundboard, and for that I measured up my 12-inch speaker and simply outlined it and then cut the hole with the support of my lovely wife. Mounting up the speaker was a pretty simple task. I just fastened it with a couple of screws and made sure it was secured in place. After that, the mesh for the grill came in, and it came in just the right size, although I did have to cut just a little bit off. It'll give me enough for maybe another project at some point. The mesh was pretty easy to apply. I just made sure to lay it out, and I had just enough to cover all 4 edges. Actually, a little bit of excess that I had to cut off at one point, but that's okay. Really, all that was left was to put the soundboard with the speaker inside of the cabinet and secure it to the actual cabinet. And after it was secured, I hooked up my speaker wire. And after the speaker wire was hooked up, began to start the setup. I'm so grateful and blessed to be able to finish this project, and I'm so grateful to you, Dad, for letting me have the opportunity. Thank you.